Hello and welcome to week 3 Waiver Wire Show. My name is Adam Levitan. Each and every Tuesday, I am joined by our season-long bro, our waiver wire bro, John Daigle, to discuss the most important pickups and discussion around those pickups of the week. A lot to get to today as injury Armageddon continues to hit very early. Daigle, how's it going today?
The bags under the eyes are quite large as we have who knows how many available players that we actually started our season off with. So let's get to it. Let's touch on everything here.
Yeah, lot of injuries and fallout from those injuries. We will get to all of that today. We'll talk through the best pickups for your regular home league. We'll also talk through ads for deep league stashes, everything around that. If you want the full article, of course, if you have DraftKit Pro, you do have access to all of Daigle's waiver wire work, which includes Discord Q&As, one injury away article, which we'll talk about a little bit here, the waiver wire article, and more. Before we get into it here today, this show is indeed brought to you by our friends at Underdog Fantasy. Yes, season-long best ball drafting season is over, but they have weekly snake draft tournaments. We've improved our rankings for that format this year. If you're an in-season subscriber, head to the NFL tab on ETR, then the Underdog tab, and you'll see Underdog Battle Royale ranks. We're using our sims to help show if you take, say, Josh Allen, and he's the optimal quarterback for the week, how often is Dalton Kincaid also the optimal? So definitely check it out. If you don't have an Underdog account yet, promo code ETR for the deposit bonus. That's promo code ETR at underdogfantasy.com. All right, Daigle. I think we should start with the two biggest stories of the week from a waiver wire perspective. They may not be the guys you want to bid on most, and Daigle isn't recommending that you bid on them the most, but I think it's the two most important spots. It is Chiefs running back and Rams wide receiver. Isaiah Pacheco is going to miss 6 to 8 weeks, leaving a mess behind him. Clyde Edwards-Helaire remains on IR, suffering from PTSD, other types of stuff like that. They have Jerick McKinnon on the street, have not kicked the tires on him. They have Carson Steele, who got a bunch of work after Pacheco went down. And they, of course, have Samaje Perine, who's played a little bit, a smattering of pass down snaps for them. Today, we're recording this around noon Eastern on Tuesday. They are working out Kareem Hunt. We do not know if they're going to sign Kareem Hunt, but they're at least working out Kareem Hunt. Of course, Kareem Hunt was with the Chiefs a while back. Daigle, how are you thinking about the Chiefs running back situation on the wire?
It's an interesting week from the top down of the waiver wire because there are a lot of touch and go situations. We are waiting on Jeff Wilson injury, Aaron Jones injury, etc. But the guaranteed spot is this Chiefs backfield, even though we're not sure if we have 2 or 3 players. Andy Reid actually told us Monday morning they were going to move forward with whoever's on this roster, Keontae Ingram on the practice squad included. And then a couple hours later, it was suggested that actually reportedly Kareem Hunt's coming in for a workout on Tuesday. And as you said, Hunt is familiar with the playbook, can literally be plopped in, probably knows it better than Samaje Perine. And that's concerning since Perine's not getting any carries whatsoever, just a smattering of targets weekly as Jerick McKinnon did before he was released over the offseason. So I think the big winner here in my mind is Carson Steele. And the box score does look like the workload happened for Steele after the Pacheco injury. That wasn't the case. Steele had 5 carries with Pacheco still healthy, a carry inside the 5-yard line with Pacheco still available in the first half as well. And then when Pacheco got injured, Perine did come on, ran a route, caught a pass, but it was still Steele, even though he fumbled in the first half, who the team and Andy Reid trusted to ice the game with 2 carries on the last drive to put Harrison Butker in field goal winning position. I truly think they trust him. And I think he has the most touchdown equity in having that inside the 10-yard line role for this offense. So Steele is the one I want. And then maybe Kareem Hunt doesn't end up signing there, but I am assuming he does. And then I think his range of outcomes is much more appealing than Samaje Perine personally, who, again, through 2 games, hasn't had a single carry. I would imagine Kareem Hunt at least does that if he signs, probably even as early as this week. So in a tie, everyone else is considering this a coin toss, and maybe they're right, but I do think it's close enough to where I like taking a chance at a cheaper Kareem Hunt's upside than spending the money on Perine, who we have at least seen so far they're not mixing in for carries.
What about for people like me who still play in boomer leagues where it's not fab, it is should I burn the top waiver priority on something like Carson Steele? I need running back help in my leagues. I think most people need running back help in their leagues. Would you burn the top priority on someone like Steele or Hunt?
I would not, because I think it gets even murkier whenever Clyde Edwards-Helaire comes back. Regardless what you think of CEH as a player, it's still going to be a fourth body in this rotation. My worst fear, and I think what will actually end up happening, is that they cannibalize each other. So no, I'm not using a high upside, high ceiling, number one overall waiver pickup on one Chiefs running back.
Yeah, and to be clear on Steele, like he earned it, man. I mean, he was on no
Absolutely.
one's projected roster coming into the preseason. He went out in the preseason in practice and in games and earned it by playing really well. And like Daigle said, they trusted him. I like Steele. We'll see what happens with Kareem Hunt. Let's go to the other big situation here, Daigle, and it is at the wide receiver position where now the Rams are without both Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp for the foreseeable future. They also have tons of offensive line injuries. We know that the wide receivers they have, they're going to try to get wide receiver king making going with Matthew Stafford. Can you make a king out of Demarcus Robinson, Jordan Whittington, Tutu Outwell, guys like that? Daigle, how would you be handling Rams wide receiver on the waiver wire?
We can honestly just copy paste the conversation we had last week when I called the demise of the Rams right back here, because again, I'm still very worried. Stafford now the QB 13 and QB 30 in what was supposed to be soft matchups to begin the year. These are the matchups where he's supposed to show his ceiling, because now coming in and they're still missing left tackle Joe Noteboom, ankle injury on IR. Steve Avila underwent knee surgery since the last time we talked, and left guard Jonah Jackson also placed on injured reserve with shoulder surgery. Now they have the 49ers, Bears, Packers, Raiders, Vikings, and Seahawks all coming in over their next 6 games. Again, I am very worried about the floor and just overall outcome of the Rams organization and offense for the rest of the year. Demarcus Robinson offers the highest floor. And in the first half of that game, before the wheels went off against the Cardinals completely, 3 wide sets were as expected. It was Tyler Johnson, Demarcus Robinson, and Cooper Kupp in that order in 3 wide sets, basically for every single route. Then Cooper Kupp is unable to return after the half, and Jordan Whittington is put in the slot. The way I wrote it up in the waiver wire, and I still think this is true, is that especially in season-long leagues when we're going for ceiling, we know what Demarcus Robinson is, right? Like, and that's flex worthy. That's no big deal. But there are definitely situations where you don't need that. You're not desperate. I do think instead going to Jordan Whittington is at least an unknown that perhaps has a much higher ceiling. And Tyler Johnson, sure, you can pick up, but again, we saw Tyler Johnson's career in the first half. 2 catches, 20 yards. That's who he is. That's who he's been on our dynasty roster since 2019, even though I love you, buddy, but you got to play him in cash over Alan Lazard. But beyond that, Jordan Whittington, I think, is the better ceiling option here.
Yeah, that would have given me 4 Rams, Daigle. I don't think we won 4 Rams on one team there in cash. But anyways, yeah. So for anyone who didn't follow the preseason, Jordan Whittington was unreal. First team, all preseason absolutely smashed. I was actually surprised that Whittington opened the regular season behind Tyler Johnson, behind Tutu Atwell. They didn't seem willing to give Whittington routes. They gave him that end around in week 1, which he scored on, but was called back by penalty. So I was just a little surprised by that. But man, from what I saw in the preseason, Whittington clearly has the highest ceiling here. He's rostered in just 1% of Yahoo leagues, as Daigle points out here in the article. I think we know what we get out of Demarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson, Tutu Atwell. What we get, though, is maybe Matthew Stafford can turn them into something. I agree with Daigle. It looks really bad right now. But again, Matthew Stafford has made guys like Marvin Jones, Kenny Golladay, Golden Tate look like actual superstars in his career. I'm not going to put it past Matthew Stafford that he can't do that with these guys. So yeah, Daigle has fab recommendations in here. What do you think about maybe like Stinky Pinky asked us a question, Whittington or Atwell with Kupp out? Sounds like you prefer Whittington. Daigle, how would you structure bids around Whittington and Atwell?
I definitely do. And that's because we know again who Atwell is, and that's someone who was benched in favor of Demarcus Robinson from week 12 on with that playoff team last year. For both, though, especially in deeper leagues, 14-team leagues, they're just not going to garner anything. They're going to fly so far under the radar compared to Robinson and Johnson, which is why I also like sprinkling on both. So I have suggested in there $2 to $8 for someone like Whittington out of $100 budget. And it is a wider range of outcomes just because I really think you can get them for $3. I don't think you need to go that high, but I definitely would sprinkle a little bit more, $8-10, honestly, if you think someone else in your league is going to try and compete.
You got to know, is somebody in your league #team preseason? If they are, they could bid more for Mr. Whittington here. Yeah, but does not sound good on Kupp or Nakua at this point. All right, let's go to some other one-off guys, maybe not as injury related. Top fab guy you have on here for this week is Quentin Johnston. Quentin Johnston led the Rams once again in routes and targets here. Josh Palmer came into this game banged up. He was playing the Panthers, right? And I want to just like caveat everything we say about Chargers stuff this week with this Panthers defense has absolutely no talent whatsoever. But yeah, Daigle, anyways, long-term outlook on Quentin Johnston here off the wire.
The Chargers have cruised so far. They've played the Raiders and Panthers, and thus they could play the exact style of ball they wanted to with just handing the rock off to Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. But if you look at their upcoming schedule over the next month and a half against, maybe the Steelers hang around and compete. Maybe they can play that way. But beyond that, the Chiefs, the Cardinals, the Saints, it's not going to be just hand it to J.K. Dobbins and get out of the way. It's going to be you have to push the ball through the air. And right now with DJ Chark out injured, Josh Palmer suffering another injury, banged up his knee. We're not sure about his status just yet. It really does seem like the runway is cleared for Quentin Johnston, who it wasn't just this week. Now it's back-to-back games, a 20% target share and a 35% target share, unlike last year where he couldn't even earn targets. So he's a first-round wide receiver. Under Jim Harbaugh, I'm willing to just close my eyes and say maybe they figured it out with him because so far the results are good.
Yeah, I question the ceiling on what this is going to be in this type of offense with the way we saw Quentin Johnston play last season. I don't expect them to be positive PROE at any point. So I question the ceiling a little bit, but I think he's going to be out there a ton. And clearly, like, they are scheming the ball to him. There are a lot of first read targets for Quentin Johnston right now. So if you're desperate at wide receiver, I'm okay with that one. As we move down here, Derek Carr looks like the best quarterback in the NFL. I mean, I don't know, Daigle. It wasn't that long ago people were telling me that Derek Carr was the MVP of the league. What was that, like 2020 or something? I don't even remember what year it was when he was absolutely shredding for the Raiders. So maybe it's in there. He's just been coached so poorly these years that it was just in my head that this guy sucks. But anyways, Derek Carr is absolutely shredding. And meanwhile, we have a ton of quarterbacks who just like aren't throwing the ball very much, period.
And
so go ahead on Derek Carr.
And I even noted in the column that Matthew Stafford, Trevor Lawrence are two guys I'm willing to get away from. Lawrence has now gone 6 consecutive games with a top 10 finish. Really just hasn't been a ceiling option whatsoever. And so, of course, I would want to replace him, especially in 1 QB leagues with Derek Carr, who we're at least seeing, will he continue as the QB2 in points per game? Probably not. But it's the same reason people draft Tua and Jared Goff as QB1s. It's because they're just trying to get a piece in the environment. And right now, Clint Kubiak is leading all cover images about week 2 recaps because so far he's the truth. Literally leading the league in play action on 50% of their plays, and Derek Carr from play action, a 71% completion rate for 13.8 yards per attempt. The 12.5% touchdown rate will not sustain. I understand that. But even fringe or low-end QB1, especially in these desperate times, I do think we're just trying to soak up a piece of this modern offense.
Yeah. In quarterback and pocket passers like that, you mentioned Goff and Tua, who obviously is hurt now, but I just like to play matchups, So ideally, like, I would have a bunch of pocket passers that I could stream through, and Derek Carr would certainly be at the top of that list. On Thursday night, we got to look at Dolphins backfield without Raheem Mostert, who was out with a chest injury. Jeff Wilson also got banged up in that game. Meanwhile, they have Devon Achane out there. They're down 31-10 with 5 minutes left. Maybe it's time to get Jalen Wright some work. I don't know. I love Mike McDaniel, but maybe it's time to get Jalen Wright some work. And he still kept Achane out there until like the very last drive of the game, which gave me a little bit of pause on Jalen Wright. Like, maybe they really don't trust this guy even for garbage time. But anyways, it makes sense. I have Jalen Wright on some teams. I just want to keep stashing him Daigle, what do you think about the Miami backfield situation right now?
And people may look up and see that I have Wright over the Chiefs backfield. And I just think it becomes a more running back centric offense with Skylar Thompson. They cannot run the same offense they did with Tua. So in the short term, Devon Achane, who I still think is a buy low if someone's getting off the Dolphins offense, just because Skylar Thompson and those 3 starts he made in 22. And remember, that was without Achane, still led the league with a 23% running back target rate. They're going to absolutely pepper him. But because of that, they'll also get Jalen Wright involved. It's not just Raheem Mostert, 32 years old, already battling an injury. So we can't even clear the runway for him the rest of the year. But Jeff Wilson also suffered that oblique injury on Thursday night. We don't know his status just yet. So I think it's become a pretty great path for Jalen Wright already. Not to mention that for the deep Superflex leagues, bro, if Skylar Thompson's the same player as he was 2 years ago, Tyler Huntley got picked up as their backup quarterback. Tyler Huntley in 10 starts for the Ravens averaged 8.6 carries. He single-handedly kept Mark Andrews alive as the overall tight end 1 in points per game in 2021. I think there's a real chance Huntley could be starting in a couple of weeks, which would keep everyone alive in Miami.
The Snoop Man. All right, we'll keep an eye on the Snoop Man there. A couple other guys from the top of the list I wanted to hit here. Hunter Henry went absolutely berserk from Jacoby Brissett on Sunday. I actually couldn't believe it. I didn't know that Hunter Henry still had that in him, nor did I think Jacoby Brissett had it in him to get Hunter Henry that kind of line. Daigle, tight end has been a mess from elite all the way down. What do you think about adding Hunter Henry this week?
And I know we'll have questions about Isaiah Likely or Hunter Henry. Hunter Henry's still a low-end fringe tight end 1 who won't get a 50% target share every single week. But what we have seen constant so far from the Patriots is 1, they want to utilize both running backs clearly between Ramondre Stevens and Antonio Gibson. And 2, this tight end focused offense from Cleveland under Alex Van Pelt has carried over to New England so far with a league high 43% target rate to their tight ends in the first 2 games. That's what keeps Hunter Henry alive, is that 1, we have to question the talent of their wide receivers, but 2, it's going to focus on the tight ends anyhow and funnel through them in the passing game. So Hunter Henry is certainly someone we want to add as our week top 12 tight end the rest of the way.
By the way, anybody, I know Daigle mentioned the trade market for Achane and stuff like that. We are working on our rest of season top 150. Once that is done, which will be late tonight, early tomorrow, you guys can play around with our in-season trade calculator. If you are a Draft Kit Pro sub, reminder, redraft trade calculator is live. Head to the Draft Kit tab to check that out. Last guy I wanted to mention from the top here was Braylon Allen. Now, Breece Hall gets banged up. I think he took a helmet to the thigh at one point early in the game. Braylon Allen gets in there. Breece came back and looked fine to me, but Braylon still played a ton, got 2 touchdowns. There were a bunch of plays, a few plays at least I saw, where they were both on the field, one on which Braylon Allen actually scored on. So yes, everybody's in my mentions being like, do you even know that Breece Hall got hurt, dude? I'm like, gosh, I wish I didn't know. And my life is so pathetic. I wish I didn't know. But yes, I know that Breece Hall got banged up in this game. But even after he came back, Braylon Allen still played a bunch and got a bunch of high-value touches. And I also understand they play on Thursday this week. So maybe they were trying to take it easy. I doubt that. They needed to win that game so badly. Forget about what's coming up on Thursday. They had to win that game against the Titans. But anyways, I say all this to be my point is that Braylon Allen can play. And even if Breece Hall is one of the best running backs in the league, which I think he is, Braylon Allen getting 5, 6, 8 touches like Tyler Algier did last night, I think makes sense for the Jets, period. So anyways, Daigle, what do you think about adding Braylon Allen, the youngest player in the NFL?
He's good too. His weekly range of outcomes is probably somewhere between 2 touches in garbage time in week 1 and 2 touchdowns for injured Breece Hall in week 2. He's honestly the hardest player to parse on this week's waiver wire because let's say Dameon Pierce and Joe Mixon are ruled out. Of course, you would play Cam Akers over Braylon Allen this week. Same thing for if Aaron Jones were out. Of course, you would want to roster Ty Chandler instead. Ty Chandler, who's actually been a top 30, he's been a RB 37 and RB 33 through 2 games. That's flex worthy without Aaron Jones being injured. So sticking Allen on your rosters really just comes down to the build of it. He's definitely one of our top stashes. He's moved up the 1 injury away list because we've already seen his talent flash now. But for me, it's just about Braylon Allen touches have to come from not only the best player on the Jets roster, but one of the best player and most explosive players in the entire league from Breece Hall. And in like this Nathaniel Hackett offense that's running at the fourth slowest pace, I just don't know how both guys get there. And I don't know how Allen provides flex value. So like it's sexy, don't get me wrong, but I don't want to, overhype him and think that I can suddenly just plug him in, because I don't think you can.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to start him, but I think one of the best handcuffs in the entire league.
Absolutely.
We'll get to the one injury away list here in a second. You mentioned the Joe Mixon situation. I actually think Joe Mixon is going to be fine with that ankle and play. They also have Dameon Pierce, who's dealing with a hamstring injury of unknown severity. Dameon Pierce was active over Cam Akers in week 1. Daigle, what do you think about Texans running back situation right now?
I can't believe we're already here in week 2 that we're having to discuss this player was active in week 1 but got injured in week 2. Thus, the third string running back's now up. But that's really what the situation is that Cam Akers looked great, 5.8 yards per carry in the fourth quarter when he came off the bench for Mixon on Sunday night. But he was only active because, as you said, Dameon Pierce had beat him out for the RB2 role in week 1. How serious is that hamstring injury for Pierce? I'm not sure, but I do think Pierce would be the running back to have, assuming he's active, if Mixon is inactive. The thing is, with the last day DMP, I think we're closer to Pierce also not being too ready to come back. So Akers is still the guy I'm prioritizing there, but deeper leagues are certainly going to still sprinkle on Pierce everywhere.
All right, let's go to some deeper league situations. Here we have some of the same guys. You can also add Dante Foreman to the mix, Juwan Jennings with the Debo injury, Mike Gesicki. My gosh. I mean, he was getting a ton of first read looks, also out targeting Jamar Chase. And then you also have Naylor and Tolbert down here. Anyone you want to highlight on the deep league list here, Daigle?
Lots of scrubs at the bottom, actually, since even the deep league guys, they just go directly to the third string running back. They know how to play, like the Julius Chestnuts and the Rocky McIntoshes of the world, whose RB2s like Tajay Spears and Kenneth Walker are out. Like the deep league whales, they just go straight to him and they pick them up for $1. It's so smart. But I do think that Andy Dalton coming up makes the Carolina passing offense a little more relevant, a little more exciting. It's definitely going to rejuvenate Deontay Johnson at the very least, who will be in our buy low column for sure. And then Deontay Foreman, I think, is the one that sticks the most. There were a lot of rug pull situations that were extremely frustrating in week 2 between Jaleel McLaughlin and the Broncos backfield, Alexander Madison, who did backdoor a goal line touchdown, but for Amir Abdullah to be balled from the very first drive, that's concerning when all 3 players, Zamir White included, are getting touches. But Deontay Foreman popped up and out-touched Jerome Ford from the very beginning significantly, 15-8, to have 14 carries. That's something that, with Pierre Strong also injured, regardless of if Jerome Ford takes his workload back, Foreman is still someone that should stick on our roster now that Strong may be out of the way with a soft tissue injury for a bit of time. So Foreman, I think, is the one I'm most excited about here.
Okay. Yeah, I think the Naylor thing is interesting because I do think this Darnold stuff is not a fluke. I mean, we talked about it so much in the preseason, the Kevin O'Connell stuff. However, Justin Jefferson's injury does not sound serious. And I was reading this morning, it sounds like Jordan Addison actually has a chance to play in week 3, which is great news for my bags, but would not be good news for Jalen Naylor, clearly. But if you're in a deep league, I still think Naylor is an interesting stash at the wide receiver position. Agree with Daigle on the Dante Foreman stuff. Let's get to some questions here, Daigle, unless there's anything else you want to mention here before we get to the questions. Oh, we should mention some defense streamers. Any streamers for the people this week at the defense position?
Oh, yeah. And it's already shaking out like last year in the fantasy playoffs where you just could pick anyone, because once the backup quarterbacks get in, it's game over. Take your pick. So like Seattle against Skylar Thompson, play them. The Bucks are getting Bo Nix, play them. The Packers against Will Levis, who, man, we need the Titans to get out of this 3-game stretch to start their year, because it's not pretty right now, the defenses they're having to play. So the Packers are also live. And then I know we're all cheering about Andy Dalton under center, but like the Raiders and Max Crosby, they just got after Lamar Jackson on basically every snap. Of course, they can crush the Panthers pocket Andy Dalton. So honestly, we're already to the point where there are so many options every week.
For sure. All right, let's get to some questions here, Daigle. We are pre-recording the show, not doing it live here today. You can check it out on YouTube. Will be posted Tuesdays in the afternoon, also on the audio stream Tuesdays in the afternoon. Kilburr says, I have the number one waiver claim and am 2-0. I'm not really hurting anywhere. Should I just hold on to number one for next week? So, yeah, I think the number one waiver claim is pretty valuable. It's always a fine line for me, Daigle, between should I burn it or should I save it? The longer you save it, it's like, well, I hope something good happens for you now. I hope some good, because I don't want to just hold it all year and not be churning my roster, not using waiver claims at all. So I don't know that I'd use it this week, but yeah, what do you think generally about that? And then specifically this week about using number one waiver claim?
And usually the best waiver pickups, like last year with Puka Nacua and Kyron Williams, come in the very first week. And that goes all the way back to Elijah Mitchell and other players as well. This year it was Jordan Mason so far, and I believe I suggested 45 to 51%. So far, that looks good. But right now, the suggestions I have are still pretty low because we really don't have anyone that steps right in and has that Jordan Mason role. So the number one waiver claim, I personally am much higher on Jalen Wright, given the situation and just the fact that it's still a Mike McDaniel running back who's, again, seems to have a pretty clear path to at least RB2. And how long can Devon Achane hold up with that amount of touches? So I don't think I'd mind using it on Wright. Otherwise, though, the Chiefs backfield, like we said earlier, not really interested there or anywhere else.
All right. Fam Arante TFJ says, where's man versus machine on P. Ryan versus Steele? We addressed that at the top. I think we both agree. Pretty easily Steele there. Dice Hawk says, should I drop Isaiah Pacheco? All this stuff's going to be so dependent on how big your bench is. Do you have an IR spot, etc. But go ahead, Daigle, on possibly dropping Isaiah Pacheco.
I will tell you the 5 players I struggled with the most to put in the drop list, and I don't think we're there yet. Let's get to the top 2 players. I'm not there yet on Christian Kirk and Cortland Sutton. I get it. But given all the injuries around the league, I don't think they're thin enough to drop yet, given the options we will be dropping them for. Like, I think I'd still rather hold on to Christian Kirk than Quentin Johnston, for instance. So they didn't make it, at least this week. Probably next week, but not this week. For the Rams wide receivers, I know Silva has already mentioned that he would drop Puka, depending on your league. And Cooper Kupp now, 5 to 7 weeks minimum. What happens there? And if the Rams are bad, then it's probably unlikely that either player comes back. But again, I'm not there yet. I'm hoping everyone has an IR list. And then the 5th player, of course, is Pacheco, who I did squeeze out on the drop list just because the injury is so ominous to say 6 to 8 weeks, returning from a fractured fibula, adding these other players. And then when he comes back right before the fantasy playoffs, if he even comes back, then you have to ask, you have to get in your own head in that start-sit situation and be like, would I actually start him in like a must-win week 13, week 14 game in the first game back if one of these other 4 guys pops? And I just don't think that's the case. So again, roster dependent, but I do think Pacheco's close enough to where he is droppable.
Okay. God, brutal. Baker versus Carr. Who would you prefer between Baker and Mr. Carr?
Baker's definitely played good, much better than expected. Well, Dave Canales, these first 2 games, but the schedule also gets a little bit tougher the rest of the way. Again, the Bucs offense isn't lighting up the world. The Saints offense at least has been so much fun, and their upcoming schedule, getting the Chiefs, Falcons, and Eagles, like hopefully, since no one has responded to date, maybe we get some competition on the other side and we get to see what the Saints get to do with like an entire 60 minutes to play ball. Definitely Derek Carr for me.
EBK says in a super flex league, how much fab for Derek Carr? I don't really understand this question. How could Derek Carr not already be owned in a super flex league? But I assume in any kind of 2 QB or super flex, if Derek Carr is out there, that would be 100% of the budget for me. Am I crazy, Daigle?
You're not crazy. And in a super flex, I don't think I would drop Trevor Lawrence, but Derek Carr is definitely a better starter right now, maybe even for the rest of the season than Trevor Lawrence. I would drop Stafford. I would drop Aaron Rodgers as well for him. I don't know who's rostered in the Superflex league, to be honest. Like, I'm in Superflex leagues where I literally have Joe Flacco because if I don't, then I don't have any other option.
Right. That's my point. Every Superflex league I've ever been in has been every single quarterback is owned. Anyways.
Hoarded.
I digress. MLB PMouse says, should I drop Blake Corum for Ty Chandler? I don't think that one's particularly close, but yeah, Daigle, what do you think generally about dropping Blake Corum right now?
It's not close. And with these kind of questions for everyone listening, this is when you refer to the one injury away list because these players are ranked. Like we rank the stashes for this reason. Blake Corum is on the edge, but I do not have him in tier 1 just because we do not know the situation since all 8 of his carries came on the last drive to kill the clock so far. He didn't play a single snap yet again ahead of Ronnie Rivers until that garbage time situation to end the Cardinals game. So Blake Corum in the second tier, and I think we have the first tier parsed correctly, but you're looking at it now. You tell me.
Yeah, basically what we're trying to do here for those guys who are listening, we're showing the one injury away article here on YouTube where Daigle is continuously updating this to try to reflect who are the best guys, best stashes. One injury away from having a really productive role. The Jalen Wright thing, I think, is a little bit messier for me with Jeff Wilson maybe being healthy. Okay. But yeah, I'm totally fine with that. I think Braylon Allen and Ty Chandler are just so clear. On the Blake Corum stuff, it's just the offense as a whole is worse now. The offensive line situation, the pass game, and it just makes me, even if I thought Blake Corum was like so far ahead of Ronnie Rivers, it wouldn't even be close. I'm still have a little bit of concern on Blake Corum given the whole state of the Rams, like Daigle's talked about. So yeah, I'm fine with the way we have it here now. But yeah, you guys should definitely use this one injury away thing. And it's not just running backs. I mean, there's other players that are worth stashing as one injury away. They're certainly not as valuable, but you got guys like all the quarterbacks down here like Jameis. Oh, one that I wanted to bring up, Daigle. This one, man. Kimani Vidal. Gus Edwards has been like the worst running back in the NFL since midway through last year. I've seen enough. And maybe Roman and Jim Harbaugh will never see enough. But I've seen enough where Vidal should get a chance to be J.K. Dobbins' complement, not Gus Edwards. So I think that one is an interesting deep league ad also.
We can bump them up as well. Let's just aggregate this on the show every week.
Windsurfer says, what are your thoughts on Courtland Sutton? Is he droppable in a 12-team league? So Bo Nix looks like the game is too fast for him right now. But listen, he hasn't had great spots. I mean, at Seattle's a tough place to play, and then Steelers are going to make every quarterback look rough. But I'm concerned Sutton's not really a fit anyways, Daigle. You just mentioned it, though, about potentially dropping Courtland Sutton. Any more thoughts there?
Yeah, it looks like Bo Nix didn't learn any NFL reps during his 14 years in college, unfortunately. Courtland Sutton, though, still a 28.5% target share in week 1, practically soaking up all the air yards there, even though they're not really throwing downfield either. Like Devon Vele getting hammered with targets, still had a 2-yard depth of target in week 1. So Sutton's the one. I'm not kidding, because this is the kind of galaxy brain I have to use when doing the drop list. I just thought like Bo Nix has been so bad that maybe we get Zach Wilson or Jared Stidham instead. And so that's the reason I don't drop Courtland Sutton. So not there yet, but again, we are getting close for sure.
Yeah, I think like a home game against the Commanders, I want to see, like, I don't even know if they have that on their schedule. But like, I want to see Bo Nix in that game before I say that he's total dust, but doesn't look good now for sure.
Yeah.
Bobby says, can you rank your top 3 RB handcuffs who will become number 1 waiver priority? Yes. This is why we created the article, Bobby. This is why we created one injury away. Check that out on the site right now. We just talked about it there. Last question here from EBK says, are Jaleel McLaughlin and Chase Brown droppable for handcuffs like Braylon Allen, Antonio Gibson, and Jaylen Warren? So it's an interesting question here. I just think like dropping Chase Brown to me is not an option because if something happened to Zach Moss, Chase Brown would have this role to himself. But yeah, any thoughts on this question here, Daigle, from EBK?
And we're to the point where I'm not respecting ADP and draft capital that much anymore since we're now in a week-to-week game. But the fact that Chase Brown was still drafted over Zach Moss in most leagues, we don't want to get away just because Moss has out-touched him 2 weeks in a row. But I did add him to the one injury away list. You saw him in the top tier just because he now is a contingency option. Like he has no standalone value in the current state of the Bengals offense. So those are the adjustments I try to make weekly for every player.
Yeah. Yeah. Going to talk to Silva about the Moss Chase Brown situation right now. But yes, through 2 weeks, it's been very clear Moss is the clear feature back there. All right. That's going to do it for this look at the week 3 waiver wire. Appreciate everyone being here. Appreciate everyone hanging out. Again, be sure to check out the trade calculator. If you are considering season-long trades, you do need to be a Draft Kit Pro subscriber to access that. For Daigle. For everyone on the YouTube team, for Jerry, the most beautiful beast in the world, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.